Alright folks, this is part 2 of week 4, and for this we're just going to go through the actual example. You'll notice if when you first start, if you don't set a start page, because it normally looks for default.aspx, if you don't set a start page, you're going to get an error page or just a directory listing when you try to run this. So you have to go to right click order.aspx and then go to set as start page. So these instructions are on page 162, pages 162 through 164 if you're interested. Okay, once you make sure that you set the order form as the startup page, we can run this and see what it's doing. Okay. So we've got the shopping cart, got the banner at the top, the list of products. There are no products yet. If you try to click add to cart with nothing in quantity, there is a validation control attached to this. So you could put values here, but you notice it doesn't really do anything. Asks for autocomplete, but it just posts back to the same page. Go to cart does work. It goes to the cart.aspx, but you'll notice none of these buttons actually do anything yet. So we're going to have to fix that. Alright, so if we go back to design here, one of the things I can do it in source or design. We'll go to source just to make a little variety. From the toolbox in the data section, if I take SQL data source and I drag it over here and put it under the drop-down list, I now have an SQL data source. So if I go back to design view, you'll note that I can see this little smart tag right here. If I click it, there's an option that says configure data source. Now if I click the configure data source, one of the options from this drop down, I could create a brand new connection if I wanted to any database I really wanted to. But if you go to halloween.mdf, that is the file that's under app data. So I can click next. We'll call it Halloween connection string. Click next, and now I get a bunch of options here for what products and what columns that we want to retrieve. So the database is set so far. We're going to set this to products as we have on pages 135 and 130 or through 137. So we can go back to page 135 and you can see right at the top they have a picture of what you're supposed to do, and when you click next and go to the next page, they want you to go to products here. That's one of the tables. There are many tables in this database, but products is one of them. And they want us to select product ID, name, and short description, and long description, and then also image file and unit price. Okay, so it generates the SQL for it. We can click next, and you can click test query just to make sure it works. And it does. You'll see it generates all the rows that have all that information in it, such as the descriptions and the image file information, unit price, etc. So we can click finish at that point. So now the data source is configured. Now we're going to take this drop-down list here, and first we're going to enable auto postback. And then we're going to bind the drop-down list to the data source we just created. So I'm going to go to choose data source, the SQL1 data source, that's the name we left it at. And for the information we want to display to the user, we want that to just be the name of the product. That's the display. It's called the data text field. That's what's going to be here is the data text field property. The next thing we want is the product ID. That's the value. So it's basically the data value field. So there are different fields and different data you can put in each of them. So data value field and data text field. If I hit OK, now this one's data bound, and this data source is set here. If I run the application and look at how the drop-down list works now, you'll notice I have all these different items here. Deranged cat, Frankenstein, all this other fun stuff. So I can select items from the drop-down list. Although it posts back when we do this, nothing will happen. So we do need to, even though the list is populated, it's not giving us any of the information. So we do need to code for that. So what we're going to do is we're going to close this, go back to the order form here. And outside of the body in here, I'm just going to double click in the blank area there. And there's a page load event handler here. But before we code this event load, or the load event handler, we want to enter the get selected product method. So that's on page 154. If you look in the book, that's located on page 154 with all the rest of the code. So we can add that information first. So let's do that. Get selected product. So we're going to say, well, first of all, I have to have a product at the top. So I'm going to say product selected product. This will be the item the user has selected from the dropdown. Okay. Excuse me. Got a little bit of a cold. So private product get selected product. Alright, so this is ultimately going to get data out of the data source. The data source will be the in-memory copy of a part of the database, and then once we get it out of the data source, we're going to stuff it in a new object, a product object. So first we have to create a data view. In order to do that, we have to make sure we have using system.data at the top. So using system.data, that's important. So the data view is out of there. Data view products table, and we're going to cast to a data view the SQL data source 1 dot select data source selected arguments dot none. That will return the entire set, all rows, or empty, not none. I'm sorry. That's wrong. Here we go. So once you get that, then we're going to take a row filter to it. So the product table dot products table dot row filter. We're going to put string dot format. Okay, product ID equals, and this little sneaky little thing here is basically a placeholder. And we're going to put DDL products dot selected value, so it only gets the product with that product ID. Remember earlier we set the data value field to the product ID, so we're only looking for things that are have a product ID of whatever the selected value is. Okay, so once we do that, then we want to gain or obtain that row. So you're going to say data row view, row equals, and then you have to cast it, data row view, products table at location 0. Since there's only one of each item, it's going to always be the one at location 0. And we're restricting it with the drop-down, so we don't really need to worry so much about them having a null value or something. And then create a product. Create a new product object. So product p equals new product. And then we say p.product ID equals row. Now this is the row that we obtained, so we're saying I want this particular column or field information. So you're setting the product ID member of the product. Remember, the product is our data transfer object. That's the one we created under app code here. So this is our data transfer object. It has product ID, name, short description, all that other stuff. So for that, we're going to say p.product ID and then p.name equals row at the name using the indexer here, toString. P.short description equals row short description. That's basically the names of the columns, right? So they're the fields. P.long description equals row at long description dot toString. P.unit price. Now this one's a little bit different because unit price, even if you look at the product.cs, unit price, unlike the others, is a decimal. So that means we have to convert to a decimal the data that we get back here. So I'm going to say decimal, and that's the casting of the row unit price. All right, and then P.image file is a string, so because it's a location of the image file dot toString, and then finally return P. So we create this new product in memory and then load it with the data from the database. So this is how data transfer works. You have the data obtained from the database locally, all this data put in this new product object, and then that data is returned as the product object. Okay, so we've got, again, in order to use things like the data row view and data view, you have to put using system.data at the top. So that namespace is required. So this method that we just coded gets the data for the product that's selected in the drop-down list. Then it instantiates a new product object right here. Okay, when we say product P equals new product, it will later return it, but it fills all the different items in there. Let's double check the names here. Short description, make sure the spelling's right, long description, unit price, and image file. And then we return that data back to the caller. So now we can enter the code for the load handler. And this will bind the SQL data source to the drop-down list the first time the page is requested. And then after that, we're going to add the code that displays the data for each image or data and image for the selected product in the order form. So we can see the first thing we need to do is say if this is not is postback. Remember, that's a available variable from the web application. If it's not a postback, what that means is if this is the first time, then we want to bind the drop-down list products ahead of time. Now you might think, well, didn't we just bind it already in here? Didn't I just go through here and do this? Well, anyway, the problem with that is that the binding occurs after page load, but we need it to be bound ahead of time in order for get selected product to work. So we have to force it to be data bound earlier than it normally would. So that's all you have to do there. Now I'm going to say selected product equals get selected product. Right? That's our little handy dandy method we just wrote. Now you could have put all the code in here, that would still work, but it's sloppy, so we like to break things out into methods. So then we want lbl name.text equals selected product dot name, and then lbl short description dot text equals selected product dot short description. Then lbl long description dot text is equal to selected product dot long description, and then lbl unit price dot text is equal to selected product dot unit price. Now we have to do a little more work here because this is a decimal. So we're doing the toString method and also putting the word each, or concatenating the word each at the end. So this C that we pass here formats it as a currency. So our local currency is the dollar, so it will use a dollar sign in the front and put it in the appropriate format. Then we do image product dot image URL. Okay, so this takes our basically our picture box here, or image basically, and it will take the image URL and set it equal to images / products, so that'll look locally in the images folder / products, which is probably what we expect over here, right? So images / products, and then it's got all these different pictures here, these images. So we'll select the correct image because that is stored in selected product dot image file. So we got get selected product and the load method done now. Okay, let's make sure we got all the stuff. If I run the application now, the web application, we will see the order here. If I change the item, you'll notice it'll update the description, the image, and also the price. So this is pretty handy, right? Pretty nice. So it's with fairly minimal code. They might have used some nice CSS files and stuff, but with just a little bit of design and some coding know-how, you can have it do some pretty interesting things so far. You'll notice if we click add to cart still doesn't do anything. Go to cart does, and the cart has no information in it right now. It has no items. So we'll fix that. Once we've done that, we're going to go to design view, and I'm going to make sure we're not debugging anymore. Okay, and I'm going to double click the add to cart button, and also I'm going to well, go to cart's already set, so I'm going to just have the button add click method here. I'm going to code that. The code is also on page 155 if you're following along in the book. If the page is valid, remember this is a valid. Remember that the is valid property basically is set as true or considered true if all of the validation controls are true, so are valid. So if the page is valid itself, you're going to create a cart item list. This cart item list, I'm going to call it cart, and I'm going to say cart item list dot get cart. That's our static method there. And then I'm going to take an individual cart item, I'll call it cart item. It seems a good name for a cart item, and cart at the selected product dot product ID. So we're using the selector, the indexer. If the cart item is equal to null, then we're going to add the item to the cart. Add item. So selected product, comma, convert.toInt32, the txt quantities text. So basically, if it's not in the cart already, we add it. So if it's not in the cart, because we're trying to obtain it from the cart, if it doesn't exist, we're adding it entirely to the cart. So that's the product information there, and then this is the quantity, the number that the user has selected. Otherwise, if it's already in the cart, we don't want to add it multiple times with the same name. Instead, we're going to add quantity. In other words, update the quantity. So convert.toInt32, txt quantity.text. So whatever quantity was already in there, you're going to add to it. And then you call response.redirect to cart.aspx. All right. Okay, so we got that. You're going to save this, and let's see here. So let's make sure we have our cart variable here, or our product variable here. Everything's good. Now we're going to build the cart page. So I'm going to close the order page for now. Save any changes we made to it. We can close products because we're not really editing that. And I'm going to double click cart.aspx. And for this one, I'm going to go in design view here. So we're going to set the postback URL property of the continue shopping button. There's the continue shopping button. You could do it in design view, but and go right here to postback URL, or you can add it right here. So either way. So I'll just do it this way. The information's on page 157. You just set the postback URL to tilde/order.aspx. Okay, so postback URL equals tilde /order .aspx, then put a space in there. Perfect. Okay. So that's our first step. That's so if they click the continue shopping button, then it will go back to the order page. Now we can test the change to make sure the button works correctly. So I'm going to run this. Okay, here we go. I can go to the cart. If I click continue shopping, it'll take me back. So that's exactly what I want. All right, so far so good. Now we're going to, in design view, in the cart, we're going to double click the body of the page outside so it opens the load event. And we're in the code editor here. Before we code the load event, we're going to code the display cart method. Now the display cart method and some of the other stuff that's used is on page 157 and through 159. So 157, one thing I want you to notice at the top, so we got the post URL, sorry, 159, is that at the very top inside of this class, the cart class, we have a private cart item list named cart. Now for all intents and purposes, this is the shopping cart. Okay, so this is the list of the items. Before we code page load, which actually has very few lines of code in it itself, we need to create display cart. So right here, this is the end display cart. In this display cart method, we have to remove all current items, because this list will get refreshed frequently, and we don't want it to just keep compounding. Say items.clear. This is a common technique, is you want to clear the list before you start loading new data in it. And then for int I equals 0, I less than cart.count. So however many items are in the cart, I++. And then for each of the items in the actual cart, which is basically our data structure behind the scenes, we want to add these items to the actual list. So we'd say cart at i.display. Remember, the display value, or the display method, returns the format of what we want actually displayed in the list. Okay, so we've got that. We've got display cart. Once you have display cart method, we make sure we've got our event handler here. Then we can code the, or not event handler, but our cart item list, and now we can code the actual event handler. So the event handler, we just say cart equals cart item list dot get cart, and then I'm going to say if this is the initial page load, we add the cart items to the list control. So if not postback, or is postback, sorry, is postback. If it is the first time, then we just call display cart. So that's the first time we need to do that. And that's all the code for that. Then we have some extra code we have to put in. So before we do that, though, we're going to do a little test. This is an incremental test. So before you move on, it's a good idea to keep testing. So now we should be able to select a product on the order page, enter a quantity, and add it to the cart, and then the application should add the item to the cart and display it on the cart page. So let's order 5 Freddy arms. Not sure exactly why you'd want that, but you'll notice on the cart page you've got 5 Freddy arms here. Remove item does not work, empty cart does not work, checkout doesn't work, continue shopping does go back. So if we go back here and put, we'll say 2 Michael heads on here, add to the cart, now you have Freddy arm and Michael head in the cart. So far so good. Everything's working thus far. Now we have to code the remove, empty, and checkout buttons. So if I look at cart.aspx, I've got the checkout, remove, and empty. I'm going to double click all 3 of them, going back and forth, remove, empty, and checkout. That's because it will generate the event handlers for all 3 of these. Alright, so far so good. The code for this is on page 159 if you are following along in the book, again, where we just got done. The remove, if they click the remove button, we want to be able to remove it from the list and cart. So if cart.count is greater than 0, so if the cart actually contains items and the user has selected an item. So first we're saying make sure the cart contains items. Now we're saying if the list cart.selected index is greater than -1. Now you might think that's kind of a squirrely number. Why are we using that number? What does -1 mean? -1 means the user has nothing selected. So not only does the cart need items in it, but also the user has to be selecting something. If they're not selecting something, then we want to take the message label and put please select an item to remove. Right? Okay, but what if they are selecting an item? This is where we actually remove it. So I say cart dot remove at, and then list cart dot selected index. So we remove the item at that index, and then we redisplay the cart. So display cart. You'll notice the code that they have in the book. They append the things like the methods with this dot. That's just to keep there from being any collisions between namespaces, to make sure that it knows that we're talking about this cart and this class and everything. But it's really not necessary at this point. So I'm leaving them off. So you can call display cart there. Now empty, what empty does is it will clear the whole thing. So if I say if cart.count is greater than 0, so as long as the cart's not empty already, cart count greater than 0, then we want to say cart.clear, and then you also want to clear the list. Now let's be careful with something here. The cart clear method was defined, it's user defined inside of the cart item list here. So if we look, where is it? Right here, it basically acts as a wrapper on top of the cart items list, which also has a clear method. So you'll notice that these two both need cleared. This one is the data that's actually held in memory, the cart.clear. This has the data about all the different products, all the different cart items. But this right here, list cart.items.clear, that will clear the list. So these are essentially what we would call parallel arrays or parallel containers. They both contain items, and the item at, say, location 0 in this list is the same as item location 0 here. Item 1 here is item 1 there. Item 2 here is item 2 there, etc. And then finally, the checkout button. We're not implementing the checkout button yet. I think they do it a little bit later in another session. So we're going to just say, sorry, that function hasn't been implemented yet. All right, so far so good. And make sure everything's saved here. And then I'm going to run it and see what happens. So we've got this running here. If I order, say, 3 Freddies, add to cart, continue shopping, order a 5 Jar Jars, because everyone needs more Jar Jar in their life. So the ugly rat, I'm going to order 2 of these. Okay, so you got all these items here. If I click remove item by selecting Jar Jar, and I can click remove item and it removes all the Jar Jars. If I click remove item now with nothing selected, it'll give me an error down here. Okay, please select an item to be removed. If I click checkout, it'll tell me, sorry, that function is not implemented yet. Right? If I click empty cart, it'll remove everything in the list. Right? So that's pretty much all you need. I hope that you'll follow along with the code and do what I was showing, and then you'll be able to see how it works, because the only way you're going to learn is by doing. So let's look here at our syllabus to end this out and make sure we're on the right page here. So this is the week of the 16th, so developing multi-page web applications and then testing and debugging. This is chapter 4 and 5. Programming assignment 1, again, programming assignment 1 is uploaded, is due March 13th. So you have 3 weeks to work on it. Midwinter breaks in a couple weeks. Next week we'll go over standard server controls and validation controls a little more in depth. And then when we come back, we'll start talking about how to maintain state and then review for the midterm. The midterm will be coming up on the 16th. There will be no lecture for that week. It's just the midterm. I will try to set up different times for the midterm exam so that you can come to the Orchard Ridge campus, or if I get enough demand, I might have stuff on another campus or try to work out something with MTech or something to proctor the exam for anyone who can't make it to the Orchard Ridge campus. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email me, and I will see you next week. Thank you very much. Bye.